As of June 2024, the United States remains the largest economy in the world, boasting a GDP close to $29 trillion. China follows at $18 trillion. Not only does the US have the highest military budget, making it the most powerful military force globally, it's also the third most populated and the fourth largest country in terms of land area. Clearly, the US holds the status of a global superpower. No matter where you are in the world, it's evident that other countries are quickly catching up, with China leading the pack. But the question remains, can China, or any other nation for that matter, really surpass the US to become the top superpower? Today at Economy Obsession, we'll explore this possibility. But before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more insightful videos. Truthfully, only a few countries have the potential to challenge the US for the title of the world's most powerful nation. To be considered a superpower, a country needs a vast population, extensive land, wealthy, abundant natural resources, and significant military spending. The ongoing debate suggests that China is on the rise as a new superpower, potentially displacing the US from its position atop the global power hierarchy. There's no doubt China is becoming an economic giant, expecting to overtake the US as the world's largest economy by 2035. While still trailing, China is closing the gap in military capability with increased investment in weapon technology and the development of several secret projects. So let's look into the reason why the US might always remain the dominant global power. Firstly, the United States holds a significant lead in the key aspects of national power. Among all nations, China is the closest contender, yet the US surpasses China in wealth and boasts military capabilities 5 times greater. Closing this gap would take decades, even under less favorable conditions for the US. As China strengthens its military, the US is likely to respond by further enhancing its own forces. China's advancements could actually spur the US to develop new technologies and expand its lead. Moreover, it's improbable that the US will face major setbacks. It has the most promising long-term economic growth prospects among the major world powers. Economists argue that sustained growth depends on a nation's geography, demographics, and political institutions, all areas where the US has an advantage. Unless a catastrophic event occurs like a supervolcano eruption at Yellowstone National Park, the US's position remains secure. Geographically, the United States is ideally situated as both an economic hub and a military stronghold, rich in resources and equipped with more navigable waterways and ports than any other country. Its only neighbors are Canada and Mexico. In contrast, China has depleted many of its resources and is encircled by 19 countries, many of which are either hostile or unstable, with 10 claiming parts of Chinese territory as their own. For example, China's ongoing border disputes with India in the region of Arunachal Pradesh and the Aksai Chin area show tensions. There are also territorial claims from Vietnam and the Philippines over the South China Sea, which involve several other nations in contentious maritime boundaries. To put it simply, the US benefits from its geographical isolation. Unlike other superpowers like Russia, India, and China, which share borders with multiple countries including each other, many of these neighboring countries are unpredictable and unstable. Demographically, America stands out as the only nation that is large, young, and highly educated. The U.S. workforce is the third largest and second youngest among superpowers, with the highest average educational attainment and productivity. It's also the only major workforce expected to grow throughout this century. In contrast, China is set to face significant demographic challenges. Over the next 30 years, it's expected to lose around 200 million workers and gain 300 million senior citizens. Also, the average Chinese worker produces significantly less wealth per hour than their American counterpart. Moreover, a substantial portion of China's workforce lacks a high school education, and a third of its young people entering the workforce have an IQ below 90. Now let's shift focus to Russia, America's old Cold War adversary. Russia still poses various threats to U.S. interests, menacing U.S. allies, supporting U.S. adversaries like Iran and Syria, harming pro-democracy advocates, meddling in elections, and seizing foreign territories near its borders like the recent Ukraine conflict. However, Russia is not poised to become a rival superpower like the Soviet Union once was. Its military budget is 10 times smaller than America's, its economy is smaller than Texas, and its population is projected to shrink by 30% over the next 30 years. Russia, lacking meaningful allies, faces NATO, the most powerful alliance in history, right on its borders. The United States certainly needs to stay alert to Russia's activities, particularly its election meddling and actions in the Baltics. However, the US doesn't need to prepare for another Cold War. But what if Russia and China join forces? The likelihood of Russia and China forming a new alliance is slim. They share a lengthy 2,600-mile border, compete for influence across Eurasia, and even sell arms to each other's enemies. Despite these tensions, Russia and China can still negatively impact U.S. interests by collaborating on specific issues. For example, both nations have invested billions in media and hackers to challenge the spread of democracy favored by the U.S. They've also worked together in the United Nations to dilute or block U.S. sanctions on countries like North Korea and Iran. More concerning is the possibility of Russia and China starting conflicts with U.S. allies, like a Chinese conflict with Taiwan and a Russian conflict in the Baltics, potentially overstretching U.S. military resources. Let's also consider the global dominance of the US dollar. It's the international currency of choice, holding more than 61% of all foreign bank reserves, according to the International Monetary Fund. Many of these reserves are held in cash or US bonds, such as US Treasuries. Furthermore, about 40% of the world's debt is denominated in US dollars. The dollar's status as the world's primary reserve currency largely stems from the size and robustness of the U.S. economy and the dominance of its financial markets. Despite significant deficit spending, trillions of dollars in debt, and extensive printing of the U.S. dollar, U.S. Treasury securities remain the safest place to store money. It's highly unlikely that global institutions will swap their American dollars for Chinese renminbi or Russian rubles, which continues to benefit the U.S. immensely. In terms of corporate wealth, the majority of the world's most valuable companies are American. As of June 2024, 8 out of the top 10 most valuable companies by market capitalization are based in the U.S., and out of the top 100, 61 are American. Many of these companies are in the technology sector, serving billions of people worldwide. The data and revenue collected by these companies allow them to grow even larger, more powerful, and more efficient. It would take a monumental disaster for any other country to surpass the U.S. dominance in global trade and finance. Furthermore, American culture, particularly as promoted by Hollywood, and the idea of the American dream makes the U.S. the most influential country globally. Any country attempting to create an entertainment industry to rival America's could also be seen as a threat to U.S. national security. To sum up, while China is pushing hard to dominate on the world stage, it has many domestic issues it's currently overlooking. It's likely that one of these problems will cause China, in its present form, to either contract significantly or fall into another civil war. Russia is currently grappling with social issues that hinder its ability to dominate the political scene. Meanwhile, the European Union is struggling to keep some of its member nations financially stable and within the Union itself. The long-standing language, cultural, and historical barriers that have troubled Europe for nearly 2,000 years aren't going away anytime soon, which prevents the EU from claiming global dominance. Over in Japan, the population is shrinking and aging, which limits its potential to be more than a regional military power, even though it remains an economic giant on the global stage. The other two contenders for the title of the most powerful country, Indonesia and Brazil, are geographically isolated and face linguistic hurdles with no significant history of military intervention or dominance. Despite being rich in resources, both countries have deep-seated social issues that hinder their rise to global prominence. Despite media speculation about America's decline, no single country or group has the capability to match what the US does alone, and most wouldn't dare to try. The US will continue to be the dominant global power for many decades to come. What are your thoughts? Will the US always be the global superpower, or will another nation eventually overtake it? Let us know in the comments section below. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please drop a like, and if you love this sort of content, consider subscribing. It's completely free. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you soon in the next video.